So focusing on what's next at Euro 2020. Obviously, we're looking at the remaining group games now because in the next week, games are becoming thick and fast. We've got teams playing, weekend, midweek games to finish off the group stages. Andy, what group games are you most excited about that are left? Because I'm looking at Portugal against France, maybe. That's a huge game. Obviously, a repeat of the 2016 final in Paris. I mean, that one really jumps off the page, doesn't it?
Yeah, Group F, as I said last week, I'm looking forward to everything to do with Group F. And even as we're recording, the opening game of Group F going on and Hungary playing Portugal effectively to a standstill and maybe even having a slight advantage in that one. It's just, there's so much quality in that group. And I probably personally did Hungary a disservice last week when I said, well, sorry, Hungary, you're in the group with three of the, the global powers. They've acquitted themselves well thus far, and I think they have shown over the process of qualifying for this tournament that they belong there, and they belong in that conversation of the top 12 or 15 or so European nations. So they're going to hold their own at this tournament. Every single game in that group is going to be just so interesting and so important as well. Really, what it comes down to with three teams advancing from the group stage, from most of the groups during the group stage of this tournament, is that anybody that drops points against Hungary is at risk of not going through. That's what it comes down to. If you can't beat Hungary in this group, then you find yourself in a position where you're looking at either 3 or 4 points at the end of the group, maybe even 2. And so then you're in a position where you're not going to go through as one of those best third place teams. So, we talk about group of death and everything with this group. What it really means is that everybody has to beat up on somebody. And I don't want to go out on too much of a limb here before they've played a game yet, but I kind of feel like that team might actually end up being Germany in the end. I've just not loved what I've seen from them over the last few months with Yogi Löw. The end date is near. We know it's coming. That team has not looked great. I know they do well at international tournaments, except kind of not at the last one. I don't know. It's a gut feeling that I thought I would throw out there.
It's really interesting because I was speaking to a couple of German journalists at Wembley over the weekend and said, how are you guys feeling? They were not confident. They say they know that the big plan is there. Hansi Flick's going to come in after this summer, and there's a lot of good young players there. But it almost feels like the tournament just came at the wrong time for them, right? They've got Hummels and obviously Muller back in the team for a bit of experience, but they'll probably play a lot more than they should do, considering they haven't been in and around this squad, just for their experience in these big game moments and big game atmospheres. It's going to be interesting to see because it always feels like every single tournament, there's one superpower, one giant that falls by the wayside, and everyone's pointing their finger at Germany right now. Andy, I'm not saying you're wrong, but so many times I feel like we've gone into tournaments and said, Germany, well, I'm not sure. They end up getting to the semi-final at least. So, yeah, we'll wait and see on that one. But Nick Mendola, for you, some games out there really stand out, especially in the second round of matches. I'm looking at Spain against Poland in Seville, considering that Spain slipped up against Sweden, Poland lost against Slovakia. That seems like a crunch game, doesn't it, in that group?
It does. I look at Spain and I imagine a team that is always going to find a way. It's going to find its potential because it can win so many different ways. Over the years, maybe, I don't want to say sneaky good. Of course you're good at that level, but sneaky good at defending because there's so much style they can turn on at certain points. And I look at Poland and I think whether it's a one-man team or not, that one man is super duper good. Yeah. So I kind of look at the entire second round, that sort of swing state of games. Isn't that, maybe I'm wrong, but isn't that the way where you want to have your easiest game? Isn't that where you want to feel like you can pick up your 3 points? Like you talk about Hungary, of all the 3 teams they're going to play France after they kick the cobwebs off their tournament vibes and before they have to, and when they can potentially know that they're going through or they're desperate. So I want to be the team that it has my quote unquote easier game of the group on that day. And that's why, Joe, guess what? England is in a really good position here.
I knew what was coming.
Look, I know Scotland is going to bring the fight and I will probably, root for them. But what I loved about England in that first game was Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips just driving their transfer values up to the moon. Calvin Phillips, we didn't get to see him as much as we would have liked this year, right? There was an injury in there for Leeds. Everybody was talking about what was going on around him. But last year, go back to when they were about to be promoted, and the talk was don't sleep on this guy. Jurgen Klopp loves Calvin Phillips. Is he going to be with Leeds? Well, he is. He's lasted a year, and now he's starting with Declan Rice, who I know I underrated as well. So for me, I'm watching England-Scotland because I think this is where England sends a real message. Hey, we're 2-0. We don't have to do anything tomorrow in Game 3. So look out. You'll be there. You'll love it, and you'll no Zooms from you about it's coming home, because you will at one point start thinking that it's going to come home.
I very much doubt that. I'm the most pessimistic England fan. I've been hurt too many times over the years, Nick. But yeah, with England and Scotland, I will say it sets up well for England that Scotland lost their opening group game. They have to come out, even if it's in the second half, they have to come out and play probably 2 up top with Shea Adams, Lyndon Dykes, and actually go for it. And England are brilliant on the counter-attack with Sterling, Rashford if he plays, Sancho potentially, Harry Kane setting up counters. I mean, I just think that game is set up well for England. Now, I've said that, it won't be. But I'm looking forward to being at Wembley, as you mentioned, Nick. For me, I spent a lot of time in Scotland growing up. I played there and lived there for a while, so I have a lot of Scottish friends, and it's a football-mad country, so it's amazing to see them back in a major tournament for the first time since 1998. I can't quite believe it was 23 years without them. But the Tartan Army, I think, are quite realistic. I think if they get a point from that game, that's fine for them, because they have Croatia at home at Hampden Park in the final group game. And as Andy mentioned earlier, 4 points will probably get you out of the group in this situation. If you finish third as one of the best third-place teams, you're probably going to make it through. But for England, I just think with the atmosphere, there's a lot of things pulling in their favour against Scotland. Just the amount of options they have with Grealish not even playing in the first game. They can rotate Luke Shaw in, Chilwell, different centre-back options. And Calvin Phillips, I'd have to say, great point on him. The Yorkshire Pirlo, playing in a slightly more advanced role. I didn't really know he had that in his locker. I know he's got a great array of passing, but it's usually from deeper, as we saw throughout the Premier League season. But the way he ran into the box and picked out Raheem Sterling, that was really, really special. And there is something, I'm not going to say great, but there's some really interesting building about this England team. And you guys, as much as you try throughout the summer, you are not going to get me on the it's coming home wagon. Not yet, anyway. I
just love all the circles that you'll walk yourself in to avoid actually buying into it. It's delightful.
Yes, well, it's delightful for all of us. Okay, Andy, moving back to you. Hungary against France is another game. I know we're focusing on that group a lot, but that is, a really, really tight group. With the fans in Budapest, Hungary can cause upsets. I mean, it's amazing atmosphere we've seen against Portugal in the opener. Yeah. What do you think about France? Because, there's been a bit of uncertainty there with Olivier Giroud's comments about Kylian Mbappe coming back, and a lot of talk about, the dressing room maybe not being as united with the French national team as we previously thought. So are they the big team that maybe slip out?
That's always an issue with France, right? Remember 2010 and just the unmitigated disaster that World Cup was for that team. Obviously, most of those figures have gone and moved on by this point, but it does seem to be a lot of kind of the similar things that are kind of lingering within that camp. They managed it last time around at the World Cup and obviously able to go on and win that. I think of all the teams at this tournament, probably they will be the least affected by playing in front of, that crowd there in Budapest, that it's not going to actually cause them an issue. Obviously, it'll give Hungary a lift, but France are not going to melt under that pressure the way that some teams might do in this tournament. For me, it really is all about finding the balance in the midfield. We know about N'Golo Kante, but is he going to be by himself deep in midfield, or is he going to have support, which then allows him to push on just a little bit and be a little bit more adventurous in the way that he presses and defends and tries to win the ball back? That is obviously the number one thing that he brings to any team that he is in. So how Didier Deschamps is going to utilize him in that team, I think, to me, is the most interesting thing, because it's not quite as easy as well, get the ball up top to Kylian and to Giroud or to Benzema or to any number of world-class attackers, and they'll figure it out. That you do need a cohesive unit linking the defense, which, you know, is very good with a lot of big names back there, to that front line if you're going to go on and have success in a tournament like this where you've got to win the number of games that you have to do.
I'm just going to point out another big game that, you know, rivalries. This is right up there. Finland against Russia. And obviously Russia losing their first game, Finland winning their first ever major tournament game. Of course, it was against Denmark, and a game that was totally all about hoping Christian Eriksen was okay, which thankfully at the time of filming, it looks like he is making a very good recovery. But Finland scored on their first ever shot at a major tournament, somehow held on to win 1-0. I've got some friends in Helsinki that I played with back in the day, and they're trying not to get ahead of themselves, but you know, Russia borders Finland. You go to the east of Finland, which I have been in some small towns, and you're not quite sure if you're in Russia or Finland. There's a lot going on there, a lot of rivalry, and they're playing in St. Petersburg, which should be some atmosphere, especially as Russia need to win after getting hammered by Belgium in that opener. So Nick, what do you think about, you know, Finland are the upstarts here? Is there more pressure on them to try and get over the line out of the group, or is all the pressure on Russia here? Because they did very well at the World Cup on home soil last time out.
Yeah, I think all the pressure's on Russia. All the pressure is on Russia after that first performance. Even if you knew Belgium was good, there's always that nation, that moment you get. And I think about not necessarily golden generations or anything like that, but we've seen it in the United States' worst World Cup performances where your country's expecting more out of you than the world is. And guess which puts more pressure on you, right? No surprise. It's the country. And I think that in this particular instance, Finland is looking up and thinking, I like this guy, I like the spirit of our club, where the group of Russia is like, oh, we thought we were better than 3-0 loss to Belgium. And now who are these guys? And what sort of beef are we going to have with them? And they'll start to have, again, not as a small country, but as a smaller soccer nation, they'll start to have these debates about where they fit in their climate. And these are where all the talking points become, and that filters down. So I think the pressure, I'm not telling you that I think Finland will win, but the pressure for me, I can't imagine, and I'd love to hear the other side of it, but I can't imagine it's not more on Russia.
Yeah, it has to be. And that's going to be, I think, obviously a new rivalry because Finland haven't been at a major tournament ever. So it's nice to see these new storylines. Andy mentioned North Macedonia earlier as well, and seeing these new nations and new players. And that for me has been the big takeaway so far this tournament. I've really enjoyed seeing teams that you don't get to see a lot of, and, you know, new stars. So talking about stars, Andy, are there any superstars that really need to step up in this tournament? Because, you know, we're seeing a few, like Harry Kane maybe was a bit sluggish to start with. Obviously, Ronaldo in Portugal took care of business, but who else do we really need to step up and see, you know what, this is your time to shine on the biggest stage?
This is going to sound like a bit of a cop-out answer because I don't know who the individual is, but somebody for Italy has to step up, I think. But if we're talking about them in the conversation of can they win this tournament, then I think they need that talismanic type player. And, you know, it's great to have kind of a, you know, the team performance and everybody did their job and got them over the line in the opening game. But at some point in a tournament like this, there comes a time when one individual has to step up and almost carry the team over the line. And so I look to them. Is it going to be somebody from either in the midfield or out wide like Lorenzo Insigne? You know, can it be maybe Ciro Immobile, who we've been waiting for years and years and years to have kind of a coming out party like that? It does feel like Italy is there to stay in that conversation in this tournament. We just don't know exactly what it's going to look like, and somebody will step up during this tournament. So I will be fascinated to see who it's going to be that kind of emerges from that group. And I don't know if they become a world star or anything, but they certainly become a star back in Italy for taking this team to, I don't know, maybe the semifinals or the final.
I want to see someone step up for Spain. You know, Gerard Moreno, someone like that. I think Morata, as we said, missed a few big chances. I just don't think he's a natural finisher. So you've got, you know, the man who led Villarreal to glory. Looks much better when he came on against Sweden. So I'd just like to see him get a chance, or, you know, Pedri or some of the other attacking midfielders they have there. Ferran Torres, just take that. That's all they need. Spain dominate games. We know that. But they either win 6 or 7-0 when they're on form, or they can tie 0-0 or lose 1-0. So they're a really strange team. They love to dominate possession. We know that. Luis Enrique is a great coach, but they do need someone to step up in that attacking third for me. So, Nick, anybody else you'd like to see stand tall?
So when I look at, again, I always point to that second group that we talk about, and I'll bring in the same point from before, just because there's a U.S. fan out there wishing I would just say this. Do you remember when they went to the 2006 World Cup and there was hope that they were going to be building on 22, and they lost 3-0 to the Czech Republic in the first game, and all of a sudden, you're looking at Italy and Ghana next. And so that 1-1 draw against Italy becomes, hey, I would have taken that a couple of weeks ago. And now, so when you talk about that pressure, I do want to go back to my mind. I won't do it for all of us out there, but I would want to go back to Russia. I'll instead go in a different direction. And the situation when a team like France plays Germany in the first round and one of those teams doesn't get what they want, that's all I'm going to point to. All I'm going to point to is there is a lot of pressure there. And then you're going to look to whether it's, whether it's Joshua Kimmich or Conte or Pogba or whoever you think that is, that's what I look for. Pressure.
Quick one. Anybody changing their pre-tournament predictions? I went with Portugal. Andy went with England, I think. And then Nick went with Belgium. We all sticking with those for now after the first round of games?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with mine. You want to join me, Joe?
Not yet, not yet. Let's have another few weeks. Another few weeks, please. But we will keep you updated on Pro Soccer Talk at NBCSports.com with the latest news, reaction, analysis from the Euros. We'll have you totally covered. We've got power rankings from teams and players throughout the tournament as well, which I'll be updating. I'm sure everyone out there will totally 100% agree with my selections. But it's going to be fun, and this tournament has delivered so much so far. And there is loads more to go, lads. That's the best part about it. So cannot wait to see what these star players and star teams put out across Europe.